Commander Vethral had seen many wars. His species, the Corvani, were born for battle. They stood 8 feet tall, with 4 strong arms and hard skin like armor. For 10,000 years, they had conquered worlds and crushed enemies without mercy. Vethral himself had fought in over 200 battles. He had never known fear, but that was before the Hollow came. The Hollow were not like any enemy the galaxy had faced before. They came from the dark space between galaxies, where no light reached and no life should exist. They were a swarm of living machines that ate everything in their path. Planets, ships, entire star systems disappeared into their hungry darkness. They had no leaders to kill, no homeworld to destroy. They simply consumed and grew stronger. The Corvani Empire fought them alone at first. Pride would not let them ask for help. But after losing 40 worlds in just 3 years, the Empire had no choice. They sent messages to every species in the galaxy, begging for alliance, even the humans. Vethral remembered laughing when he first heard about humans joining the war. They were such a young species, only 300 years into space travel. The Corvani had been sailing between stars when humans were still living in caves. And physically, humans were weak. Soft skin that tore easily, thin bones that broke under pressure. They lived only 80 or 90 years, barely enough time for a Corvani child to finish basic education. The High Command sent Vethral to work with a human battalion on a frozen moon called Kethra 7. His mission was simple: hold the position until the main fleet could regroup. He expected the humans to be useful as extra bodies. Nothing more. His transport ship landed on a gray morning. Snow fell from dark clouds, and the wind cut through the air like knives. Vethral stepped onto the landing pad and saw the humans waiting for him. Their leader walked forward. She was small, reaching only to the middle of his chest. Her hair was black and cut short, and she moved with the careful steps of someone who knew how to fight. Her name, he learned, was Captain Park Jisoo. She stopped in front of him and held out her hand. Vethral stared at it, not understanding. "It is a greeting," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "You hold it and shake." Vethral wrapped one of his 4 hands around hers. Her grip surprised him. It was strong and firm. "I have read your battle records," he told her. "Your species has little experience fighting the Hollow." Jisoo smiled. It was a strange expression, showing her teeth. Among Corvani, showing teeth meant anger or threat. But humans did it to show friendliness. Vethral found it unsettling. "That is true," she said, "but we learn fast." Behind her stood 47 human soldiers in black armor. They were checking weapons, setting up equipment, talking quietly among themselves. One tall male named Sergeant Kan Dohon was building a communications tower with his bare hands in the freezing cold. A female medic named Lieutenant Yoon Harry was organizing medical supplies with quick, sure movements. They all seemed relaxed. Some were even laughing at jokes. Vethral could not hear. This bothered him. Did they not understand what was coming? The Hollow had destroyed civilizations far older and stronger than humanity. Entire species had been erased from existence. There. Planets turned into dead rocks floating in empty space. And these humans were laughing? "Your soldiers do not seem concerned," Vethral said. Jisoo looked back at her people. "They understand what we face, but fear does not help us prepare. So they choose not to fear. Not yet. One cannot simply choose not to fear. Humans can." She turned back to him. "We are very good at lying to ourselves, Commander. Sometimes that is a weakness, but sometimes it keeps us alive long enough to win." Vethral did not know what to say to this. He had never met a species that treated fear as a choice rather than a reaction. His own soldiers arrived soon after, 50 Corvani veterans, each one a proven warrior. They set up defensive positions around the base, installing heavy weapons and building barriers. They worked in silence, their movements sharp and professional. Vethral noticed the humans watching his soldiers. He expected to see admiration or intimidation in their eyes. The Corvani were twice their size, with natural armor and strength that could crush stone. But the humans did not look impressed. They looked curious, like scientists studying an interesting specimen. That night, Vethral called a meeting to discuss strategy. The Hollow would arrive soon, the censor said. Maybe in hours, maybe in days. They needed to be ready. Captain Jisoo sat across from him, her officers around her. She listened carefully as Vethral explained Corvani tactics, standard defensive formations, how to fall back if the line broke. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "Good plan," she said. "But I have a question. What happens when the plan fails?" Vethral stiffened. "Corvani plans do not fail. Every plan fails eventually, Commander. The Hollow adapts, changes. What worked yesterday might not work tomorrow." She leaned forward. "Humans have a saying, no plan survives contact with the enemy. So we train our soldiers to think, not just follow orders. When everything goes wrong, they must decide for themselves what to do." Vethral wanted to argue, but something stopped him. He thought about the 40 worlds the Corvani had lost. How many of those defeats came because soldiers followed orders? Even when those orders no longer made sense? He did not sleep well that night. The wind howled outside, and strange thoughts kept him awake. Thoughts about humans and their strange confidence. About fear being a choice. About plans that always failed. In the darkness, he did not know that his understanding of the universe was about to change forever. The Hollow were coming, and when they arrived, Vethral would learn what true terror really meant. The Hollow came at midnight. Vethral was checking the eastern barrier when the ground began to shake. At first, he thought it was an earthquake. Then the frozen earth cracked open, and darkness poured out like water from a broken dam. The Hollow were horrible to look at. They had no fixed shape. Their bodies were made of black metal and dead flesh twisted together, constantly moving and changing. Some crawled on dozens of legs. Others floated through the air on wings that should not have worked. All of them had too many eyes, too many mouths, and a hunger that never stopped. The worst part was the sound. They did not roar or scream. They clicked and chittered, thousands of small sounds that joined together into a noise that crawled inside your head. Corvani soldiers called it the mind poison. It made you want to run, to hide, to give up. Vethral felt the fear grip his chest. Even after all his years of battle, the Hollow still made his body want to freeze. "All units, open fire," he commanded. The Corvani weapons blazed. Plasma bolts cut through the night, burning holes in the advancing swarm. Creatures fell, their bodies melting under the heat. But for everyone that died, 3 more climbed over its corpse. Vethral's soldiers held their positions. They were disciplined, professional. But he could see the fear in their movements, hear it in their voices. The mind poison was working. Then he heard something strange. Music. One of the human soldiers was singing. It was a simple song, something about home and waiting lovers. Other humans joined in, their voices rising above the clicking horror of the Hollow. And then the humans attacked. They did not stay behind the barriers. They did not wait for orders. Captain Jisoo raised her hand, and her entire unit moved forward into the swarm. "What are they doing?" Vethral shouted into his communicator. "They will be killed." But they were not killed. Sergeant Kandon was the first Vethral truly saw fight. The big human fired his weapon in short, controlled bursts while moving through the enemy like water through rocks. A hollow creature slashed his left arm, cutting deep into the muscle. Blood sprayed across the snow, red and bright. Dohan did not stop. He did not even slow down. He simply moved his rifle to his other hand and kept shooting. His face showed pain, but something else too. Something like anger. Something like joy. Lieutenant Yoon Harry worked nearby, pulling wounded soldiers to safety. A creature lunged at her while she was dragging an injured man. She dropped the wounded soldier, drew her pistol, shot the creature 3 times in what might have been its head, then picked up the soldier again and kept moving. The whole action took less than 5 seconds, and Captain Jisoo was everywhere. She fought like nothing Vethrol had ever seen. When a creature attacked, she moved around it like a dancer, finding weak points and striking hard. Her rifle ran empty, so she used her pistol. Her pistol ran empty, so she used her knife. When a creature knocked the knife from her hand, she grabbed a piece of broken metal from the ground and stabbed it through the creature's center mass. She was covered in blood. Some of it was hers. Most of it was not, and she was smiling. Vethrol felt something cold move through his body. It was not the fear of the Hollow. It was something different. Something he had never felt before in all his years of war. He was afraid of the humans. The battle lasted 4 hours. When the sun finally rose over the frozen landscape, the Hollow had retreated back into the earth. The ground was covered with dead creatures and spent ammunition. The air smelled like burning flesh and hot metal. Vethrol walked through the aftermath in a daze. His soldiers had lost 8 warriors, good Corvani, who'd fought bravely. He would honor them properly when there was time, but the humans had lost only 3. How was that possible? They were smaller, weaker, softer. They should have been slaughtered. He found Captain Jisoo sitting on a supply crate near the medical tent. Her armor was torn in several places, and Harry was stitching a long cut on her shoulder. The medic worked without any pain medicine. Jisoo showed no reaction except small movements when the needle went too deep. "You are injured," Vethrol said. It sounded foolish even as he said it. "I have had worse." Jisoo looked up at him. Her eyes were tired but calm. "How are your soldiers?" "8 dead. 12 wounded. 3 may not survive the night." Jisoo nodded slowly. "I am sorry. They fought well. Your people." Vethrol struggled to find words. "I have never seen anything like that. You ran into the swarm. You should have died. Probably." Jisoo shrugged, then winced as the movement pulled at her wound. "But we did not. How? How do you do this? Your bodies are fragile. You have no natural armor. You feel pain just as we do, maybe more. How do you keep fighting when you're injured like that?" Jisoo was quiet for a moment. Harry finished stitching and began wrapping the wound in clean bandages. "Pain is just information," Jisoo finally said. "It tells you something is wrong with your body, but it does not control you. Not unless you let it. That is not possible. Pain exists to stop you from damaging yourself further. And sometimes you have to ignore that." Jisoo met his eyes. "Sometimes the mission matters more than your body. Sometimes the person next to you matters more than your pain. We learn to keep going when our bodies tell us to stop. It is not easy. It is not natural. But we learn." Dohan walked past them, his arm wrapped in thick bandages already showing spots of red. He was carrying boxes of ammunition to the front line, helping to rebuild their defenses. "He should be resting," Vethrol said. "Yes," Jisoo agreed. "But he will not. Not while there is work to do. Not while his friends still need him." She stood up carefully, testing her wounded shoulder. "Get some rest, Commander. The Hollow will come again. Probably tonight. We need to be ready." She walked away, leaving Vethrol alone with his confusion and his growing fear. That night, lying in his quarters, Vethrol could not stop thinking about what he had seen. The humans laughing while they bled. The singing in the middle of battle. The way they kept fighting long after their bodies should have failed. The Kovani had a word for creatures that felt no fear. Vethkar. Monsters. beasts without souls. But the humans were not that. They felt fear. He had seen it in their eyes before the battle started. They felt pain. He had heard them scream when they were wounded. They felt everything. And they fought anyway. Vethrol did not sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Captain Jisoo smiling through the blood on her face, and he wondered if his people had made a terrible mistake, thinking humanity was weak. 3 days passed. The Hollow attacked each night, and each night the defenders pushed them back. The base grew smaller as barriers fell and buildings burned. Supplies ran low. Ammunition became precious. The Kovani soldiers were breaking. Vethrol watched it happen slowly. First came the silence. Warriors who had joked and talked before battle now sat alone, staring at nothing. Then came the shaking. Hands that had held weapons steady for decades now trembled when the sun went down. Then came the screaming. On the third night, a veteran named Korath threw down his weapon and ran. He made it 50 meters before a hollow creature caught him. His screams lasted a long time. The Kovani medics called it void sickness. The psychological pressure of fighting the Hollow was crushing their minds. By the fourth day, 12 soldiers had to be sedated to stop them from hurting themselves or others. The humans watched this happen with strange expressions on their faces. Vethrol expected them to feel superior, to mock the mighty Kovani breaking down like children. But they did not mock. They looked sad. On the fifth night, Vethrol found Captain Jisoo standing alone at the edge of the base, looking out at the dark landscape. She had new bandages on her arms and a fresh cut above her eye that would become a scar. "You should rest," he said, walking up beside her. "So should you." She did not look at him. "But here we both are." They stood in silence for a moment. In the distance, the ground occasionally moved, a sign that the Hollow were gathering for another attack. "Why do your soldiers not break?" Vethrol asked. "They have seen the same horrors as mine. They have lost friends. They have been wounded. But they do not fall to void sickness." Jisoo thought about this for a long time. "Do you know what a wolf is?" she asked. Vethrol searched his memory. "A predator from your home planet. A pack hunter. Very dangerous." "Very dangerous," Jisoo agreed. "Wolves could kill humans easily. We have no claws, no fangs, no real weapons on our bodies. A wolf is faster than us, stronger than us, has better senses than us." She paused. "But we domesticated them." "Domesticated?" "We made them into pets, companions. We convinced wolves, one of the deadliest predators on our world, to love us, to protect our children, to sleep at our feet." Vethrol did not understand. "How is this possible?" "Because that is what humans do." Jisoo finally looked at him. "We look at things that should kill us, and we find a way to make them ours. Mountains that should be impossible to climb. Oceans that should be impossible to cross. Diseases that should wipe us out. We face them all, and we survive." She turned back to the darkness. "The Hollow is terrifying. I know this. Every time I see them, something inside me wants to run. But I have felt that fear before. Every human has. We grow up learning to face fear. How do you teach such a thing?" Jisoo smiled, though there was no happiness in it. "We nearly killed ourselves many times. Wars that burned entire continents. Weapons that could destroy our whole planet. Diseases we created by accident. Changes to our climate that almost made our world unlivable." She shook her head slowly. "We survived all of it. Not because we were strong or smart or lucky. We survived because we refused to stop trying. A cold wind blew across them, carrying the smell of smoke and death. Your people are old," Jisoo continued. "You have been powerful for 10,000 years. You have conquered many worlds. But I think you have forgotten something important." "What have we forgotten?" what it means to be truly desperate. She looked at him with eyes that held deep waters. Your people fight to win. My people fight because we do not know how to stop. Even when winning is impossible, even when hope is gone, we keep fighting because the alternative is to lie down and die, and something in us simply cannot accept that. Vethral considered her words. He thought about Corvani history, the great conquests, the mighty victories. When had his people last faced true extinction? When had they last been the weak ones, the desperate ones? Among my people, he said slowly, there is a concept called Kelveth, the worthy death. We believe that how a warrior dies defines the meaning of his life. A good death brings honor to family and clan. Jisoo nodded. We have something similar. We call it legacy, but it is not about how you die. It is about what you leave behind. What do you mean? The people you saved, the love you gave, the difference you made in the world. Jisoo pointed toward the medical tent, where her soldiers were caring for wounded Corvani alongside their own injured. See that? Private, Omina has been awake for 30 hours, helping your medics treat your soldiers. She does not have to do that. They are not her people. But she does it anyway because that is who she is. Vethral watched the young human woman moving between beds, offering water, changing bandages, speaking quiet words of comfort in a language that Corvani could not understand but somehow seemed to feel. Why does she care about strangers? Because they are not strangers anymore. We fought together. We bled together. That makes us family. Jisoo put her hand on his arm, a strange gesture that felt oddly comforting. Your soldiers are breaking because they fight alone, even when they stand together. My soldiers survive because they carry each other. The weight is shared. The pain is shared. No one falls alone. That night, Vethral gave a new order. Corvani soldiers would be paired with human partners. Not for combat, but for talking, for eating meals together, for simply being present with another living being. His officers thought he had gone mad. But he had watched enough humans to understand something they did not. Strength was not about armor, weapons, or size. Strength was about connection. The next morning, Vethral saw something he never expected. A massive Corvani warrior sat beside a small human soldier, learning a card game that made no sense to him but made both of them laugh and for the first time in days. No Corvani soldier had to be sedated. Perhaps, Vethral thought, there was more to learn from these strange, fragile, terrifying creatures than he had ever imagined. The 9th day was the worst. The hollow came in waves that never seemed to end. First at dawn, then at midday, then again as the sun set. By midnight, the defenders had been fighting for almost 20 hours straight. Vethral lost count of how many creatures he had killed. His weapons had overheated twice. His armor was cracked in 3 places. 2 of his forearms were injured, one badly enough that it hung useless at his side around him. The base was burning. The Corvani had lost 21 soldiers. Good warriors, all of them. They had died standing, weapons in their hands, facing the enemy. That was something. At least, the humans had lost 19. Vethral found himself fighting beside Sergeant Kang Dahan near the eastern barrier. The big human was covered in wounds. His armor was torn, his face was bloody, and he moved with a limp that suggested broken bones. But he was still fighting. A hollow creature broke through the line and lunged at them. Dahan stepped in front of Vethral and took the blow on his shoulder. The creature's claws went deep, tearing through armor and flesh. Dahan screamed, a sound of pure agony. Then he grabbed the creature with his bare hands, lifted it off the ground, and threw it back into the swarm. Are you damaged? Vethral asked, using his own body to shield the human while they retreated. Yes. Dahan's teeth were clenched, his face pale from blood loss, but not dead. Not dead means we keep going. They reached the secondary barrier, where Lieutenant Yoon Harry was working on wounded soldiers. She took one look at Doan and pointed to an empty spot. Sit down. Now, there is fighting to do. There will be more fighting after I stop you from bleeding to death. Her voice left no room for argument. Sit, Doan said. Vethril watched Harry work. Her hands were steady despite the chaos around them. She cleaned wounds, applied medicine, stitched torn flesh back together, all while explosions and screams filled the air. How can you focus? He asked. The battle is still happening. The battle is always happening somewhere. Harry did not look up from her work. My job is to keep my people alive. Everything else is noise. An explosion nearby threw dirt and debris over them. Harry covered her patient with her own body, waited for the shower to end, then continued working as if nothing had happened. You humans are insane, Vethril said. He meant it as an insult, but it came out sounding like respect. Harry actually laughed. Probably. But insanity gets results. The night dragged on. Vethril fought until his muscles burned and his vision blurred. Around him, Kovani and humans fell and were dragged to safety. The medical area grew crowded with the wounded and the dying. Near dawn, there was a moment of quiet. The Hollow had pulled back to regroup. Everyone knew they would come again, but for a few precious minutes, there was peace. Vethril found Captain Jisoo sitting alone behind the command center. She was crying. He had never seen a human cry before. He stopped, unsure if he should leave. It is acceptable, Jisoo said without looking up. You can stay. He sat down beside her. His massive body made the human look even smaller. We lost Private Choi Sunho an hour ago, Jisoo said. Her voice was thick with pain. He was 23 years old. He told me yesterday that he wanted to be a teacher when he returned home. He wanted to help children learn to read. I am sorry. He died protecting Corporal Bayuna. She will live because he did not. Jisoo wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. That is something. That is what I have to tell myself. That his death meant something. Vethril did not know what to say. Among Corvani, death in battle was honored but not mourned. Warriors accepted death as part of their duty. Tears were considered weakness, but watching Jisoo cry, Vethril did not see weakness. He saw something else, something powerful that he could not name. How do you bear it? He asked. The loss. Knowing that more will die before this is over. Jisoo was quiet for a long moment. We do not bear it, she finally said. Not really. Every loss breaks something inside us. Every friend we bury takes a piece of our heart with them. She touched her chest. But humans are good at being broken. We take the broken pieces and build something new. Something that remembers the pain but does not stop because of it. She looked at him, her eyes red but clear. That is how we survive, Commander. Not by being unbreakable. By being broken again and choosing to stand back up every time. The sun began to rise over the mountains. Golden light spread across the battlefield, showing the true cost of the night's fighting. Bodies lay everywhere. The snow had turned red. Jisoo stood up. She wiped her face one more time, then straightened her shoulders. I need to talk to my soldiers, she said. They need to see me standing. They need to know we are not giving up. Are we not? Jisoo smiled. It was tired and sad, and somehow still warm. Never. We are humans, Commander. We do not know how to give up. She started walking toward her soldiers, then stopped and looked back. You should talk to your soldiers too. They need to see their commander standing. They need to know they are not alone. Vethril watched her go. Then he stood up, ignored the pain in his wounded arms, and walked toward his own soldiers. For the first time in the battle, he did not think about tactics or strategy. He thought about the faces of his warriors. He thought about their families waiting for news. He thought about the fear in their eyes and the courage they showed despite it. He thought about what it meant to truly lead. When the hollow came again at midday, the defenders were waiting. Corvani and humans stood side by side, weapons ready. And when Captain Jisoo started singing an old human war song, the Corvani surprised themselves by joining in. They did not know the words, but they knew the feeling. They were not going to give up. Not today. Not ever. On the 10th day, the fleet arrived. Vethrol stood at the command center and watched hundreds of ships fill the sky. Corvani warships, human destroyers, vessels from a dozen other species, all pouring fire into the hollow swarm below. The creatures that had terrorized them for 10 days burned, like paper in a furnace. The battle was over in 3 hours. When the last hollow creature fell, Vethrol felt his legs give out beneath him. He sat down hard on the frozen ground and simply breathed. Around him, soldiers of both species were doing the same. Some were crying. Some were laughing. Most just sat in silence, too tired to feel anything at all. Captain Jisoo found him there. She looked terrible. Her armor was destroyed, held together by emergency patches and stubborn will. Her face was covered in cuts and bruises. One arm hung in a makeshift sling. But she was smiling. "We did it," she said, sitting down beside him. "We did it," he agreed. They sat together and watched the transport ships land. Medical teams rushed out, carrying the wounded to proper hospitals. Supply ships brought food and water and clean bandages. Officers from the fleet command walked through the base, recording damage and counting survivors. Out of the 97 defenders who had started, 41 remained. 23 Corvani. Aiding humans. The human losses were higher than the Corvani, percentage-wise. But no one who had fought beside them could say they had been weak. "What will you do now?" Vethrol asked. Jisoo shrugged with her good shoulder. "Hospital first. Then paperwork. So much paperwork." She made a face. "Then, I suppose, back to war. The Hollow are not finished. There are other worlds that need defending. You would do this again? After everything?" "Of course." She looked at him with genuine surprise. "This is what we do, Commander. When something threatens the people we care about, we fight. When we get knocked down, we stand back up. When we are broken, we put ourselves together and keep going." Vethrol shook his head slowly. "I have fought in 200 battles. I have seen bravery and cowardice, victory and defeat. But I have never seen anything like your people. We are not special, Commander. We are just stubborn." She laughed softly. "Very, very stubborn." A week later, Vethrol stood before the Corvani High Command. They wanted his report on the joint operation with the humans. They expected numbers and analysis, recommendations for future cooperation. Instead, he submitted this. "For 10,000 years, the Corvani have believed ourselves to be the greatest warriors in the galaxy. We have conquered worlds and crushed enemies without mercy. We thought strength meant armor and weapons and the power to destroy. We were wrong. I have fought beside humans. I have watched them laugh while bleeding. I have seen them comfort their dying friends with love instead of cold acceptance. I have watched them break, again and again, and then stand back up and keep fighting. The Hollow is terrifying because it has no fear, no hesitation, no mercy. But humans are terrifying for the opposite reason. They feel everything. Fear, grief, pain, love. And they fight anyway. They transform their pain into purpose. They turn their grief into determination. I watched a human soldier throw herself in front of an attack meant for me. I watched another carry 3 wounded Corvani to safety while bleeding from 7 different wounds. I watched their captain cry for a fallen soldier, then dry her tears and lead her people back into battle. They are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the fastest or the smartest or the most advanced. but they are the most relentless. The hollow cannot be reasoned with. It cannot be bargained with. It cannot be stopped by fear or pain or loss. But humans are the same. Whatever you throw at them, they endure. Whatever you take from them, they keep going. Whatever horror you show them, they find a way to face it. I have seen true terror, and it is not the hollow. True terror is a species that should have died 1,000 times but refused. True terror is a mother fighting for her children with nothing but her bare hands. True terror is a soldier singing songs of home while bleeding out in the snow. True terror is humanity. Do not make enemies of them. For all our strength, all our technology, all our millennia of evolution, I do not believe we could survive what they have already overcome. They are not the deadliest species in the galaxy. They are the most relentless. And in the end, that is far more frightening. 10 years later, a memorial was built on Kethris 7 to honor those who had fallen during the siege. Vethral attended the dedication ceremony. He was older now, retired from active service, but he would not have missed this for anything. The memorial was simple. A tall stone pillar with the names of all who had died, human and Corvani together. Around it, a garden had been planted, filled with flowers from both worlds. Captain Park Jisoo was there. Admiral Park Jisoo now, with gray in her hair and new scars on her hands. She had kept fighting, kept defending, kept standing back up every time she was knocked down. She saw him across the crowd and walked over. "Commander," she said, "it has been too long." "Admiral," he corrected her rank. She laughed. "Just Jisoo. We fought together. That makes us family." Family. Another human concept that Vethral was still learning to understand. But as he stood beside her, watching humans and Corvani together honor their dead, he thought perhaps he was beginning to. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For teaching me what strength really means." Jisoo smiled. It was the same smile she had worn on that first day, warm and genuine and full of something that made Vethral's hearts feel strange. "You already knew," she said. "You just needed reminding." They stood together as the sun set over the memorial. The names of the fallen glowed softly in the fading light. Corvani names. Human names. All remembered. All honored. And Vethral understood, finally, why humanity would never be conquered. Not because they could not be broken, but because they would never stay broken. They would always stand back up.